Why do you think Florida State wasn't throwing as many intermediate routes until yesterday? Do you see anything about that deep ball?
I do. I see a problem that this is what I'm going to look at for this week's breakdown. So you guys be on the lookout for the breakdown this week, either Tuesday or Wednesday. It'll be up on the YouTube. And I'm going to look at something that I think I'm seeing is Jordan in this game. He was 10 for 10 behind the line. So screens, check downs, anything 0 or less. He was 3 for 5, 20 yards down the field. So between those two, he's 13 for 15, and he's got 3 deep balls, and then he's completing everything, behind the line of scrimmage. Between 1 and 19 yards, he's 10 for 21. So he's less than 50% on balls that you should be somewhere between 55 and 65%. If we're talking quick game, I'm expecting to be 70% quick game. So that's 0 to 10 yards. Usually that's your slants, your hitches, your flats, things like that. So I'm seeing that this may be an issue that Jordan is either having with pressure on the intermediate routes, where the passes that are over 20 yards, they're going max protection, so they have a little bit more time, or he just has an issue with accuracy between those in those intermediate routes. And Mike Norvell knows this, but it's not that he's not calling it. I mean, like I said, there's 21 out of his 30. What did I say? His 31 passes or something. Yeah. 34 passes that he threw. Of 21 of them were somewhere between 1 and 19 yards. So the routes are being run, the plays are being called, and he's missing. And the reason for him missing, that's what I'm going to dig into this week.
Now this week in particular is not, they had a bunch of drop passes too, which
there were 3 drops that were probably in that range. Right. So his passing percentage was somewhere in 60%. He would have been 72% had he have had those passes not been dropped.
Other thing
so that we're definitely, I definitely dig into that also is, what's happening on the other end of it. Are the DBs making plays? Or is he just flat out missing? Again, is there pressure? Is he, does he have 2 guys on his back while he's releasing the ball? All of that stuff.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing it. I bet the pressure is probably a part of it. And then the other thing is, it seems like to me, and this is just man, like not studying the film or going back and not obviously analyzing it the way you're going to, but to me, like everybody thinks they're throwing the ball downfield a ton this year, and they're really not, like statistically compared to last year. But I think the perception is that way because it feels like when they are throwing it downfield more, a lot of times they're contested passes. They're not wide open. Like it seemed to me like in the last couple of years, because they ran the ball so well, when they did take shots down the field, a lot of times the receivers were behind the secondary. And so I think it felt like they got completed more often. It felt like they weren't risky passes. And I think now, because Keon is so good, because Johnny's so good, I think Jordan is throwing up more 50-50-ish balls than maybe they did in the past. And I think, so it feels like he's forcing it downfield, but how much of that is when you've got really good receivers, sometimes you've got to give them those chances. Like, is that part of it?
Absolutely. So there's an element to what I'm watching is like the evolution of Jordan Travis that's also coinciding with the evolution of Mike Norvell. Like these things are happening at the same time. And so what I'm seeing is that early on, it was we got to let Jordan win the game with his legs, and we got to protect the football. We weren't very strong on defense, 2 years ago. And so it's like we got to possess the football and we got to protect Jordan, because if Jordan goes down, we definitely aren't winning the game. And so and we got to run the ball with him like 14 times. So I can't also expose him in the passing game and in the run game. Well, what I'm seeing is as they're evolving, I would say last year, the deep balls were all off of really elaborate play action fakes, that had max protection, 6 to 7 guys protecting. And it was, I don't want to say feast or famine, but it really was like a single shot post to one guy. And if that wasn't there, then it usually was tuck and run. Where now, because the offense has evolved so much and the players have gotten so much better, you have Johnny, who's now just a refined player, and then Keon comes over. Now you can push the ball down the field without so many bells and whistles, and it doesn't just have to be fake. So that's the other thing that I want to look at this week is how often are they completing drop back passes versus play action passes. Right. And so what you're talking about, what I think we're seeing as fans is they're taking more shots in the drop back game that they never took. I would say last year it maybe was one every other game where it was like drop back pass, deep ball. And it maybe wasn't even that, to be honest with you. It probably wasn't even that. Where now we're seeing about 1 or 2.5 of, hey, I'm going to just throw a 9 ball, which is a go route to Keon. And that's worth it. That's good offense because Keon is better than most of the guys he's matched up against. Probably all of them. So it's worth it for me to I had an offensive coordinator tell me one time, matter of fact, it may have been Lincoln Riley like 3 or 4 years ago, that if I have a dominant X receiver, I have to throw him a 9 route once a quarter. I owe it to my team to do that. And if that guy doesn't win, then we weren't going to win the game anyway, because that's our best player. He's our guy. He's the guy that makes this, stirs the shake. So, so that's what you have to do. And so that's probably what you're seeing. And those are lower percentage plays. But they're also splash plays that they change games. Those are game-changing moments, and we saw one, yesterday.
Yeah.
And to Ira's point, it's not that much more on the deep balls. Before yesterday's game, and we'll see what the numbers shake out to be, but it was only a 3% increase in shots 20-plus yards down the field. It's just that the accuracy had dropped from 45% to 30%. And so that's maybe what happens in the middle there. That's what Dominic is going to explain for us, and can't wait to see that break down the middle of this week on Warchant TV. So I want to get this question in before we're done from Brett. Dominic, running game thoughts after Syracuse. Now, you broke down the running game a little bit this week on the channel, but do you think that can the O-line move the line of scrimmage on a 3rd and 2 or a 4th and 1, based upon what you're seeing? No bells, no whistles, straight up, can they win in a situation like that? What do you think?
I don't feel like Coach Norvell feels confident that they can.
Right.
That's from what I'm seeing, just based on the sequencing of play calls, even that stalling of the red zone that we had yesterday. Again, the changing from counter, which is bread and butter, to trying other things, trying pin and pull, running way more zone than you've ever run. That tells me like, hey, we're searching for something to hang our hat on when we do get to the nitty gritty, when I get to the playoff, when I get to the ACC championship. That tells me that he's searching a little bit. So, no, I don't feel like we're there. Can they get there? They can get there, but I would say right now the answer is no. It's not there, and they're gonna have to either find it or find another way to be creative, to find a way to get that, because that's how games are won. Right there.
Can I follow up on that real quick, Tom? So D-Rob, we had this conversation last year. Remember when people were ripping Norvell for being too cute around the goal line, and we were like, look, man, they can't just move people. But isn't that how many? Because you watch more college football than we do. Like, we watch Florida State. You're watching teams across the country. Yeah. How many offensive lines can do that? Like, how many offensive lines out there going up against a similarly sized school conference opponent can move the line in obvious running situations? What percentage?
Honestly, it's not much. What you're seeing now is definitely a shift in college football, which is that used to be you can't win 6-7 games unless you can do that. And then we started to get very creative on the offensive side, and guys started to figure out a way to win games without having anyone block, where the perimeter screen game, to the wideouts became the running game. And, Mike Leach and some of these guys recently are starting to figure out okay, I can get really creative with jet sweep and, fly motion, jet motion, all this other stuff where I can dress up my run game. And now I don't have to be as good with the front five because the defensive players are thinking and not just playing. And so yeah, it's not this super indictment like it used to be in football. 20 years ago in football, if you said that to a offensive coach, it was like literally saying the worst thing you could about his mom. Like, you tell me that my offensive line can't move somebody, that's the most disrespectful thing you could say. And now guys are like, oh yeah, they can't, but watch this, 500 yards of offense on you. So who cares if they can move guys? Because I can move guys, So that's the way that the game has changed, evolved really, recently over the last probably 10, 15 years, is that guys are now finding ways like, hey, if my guys can't block, now it becomes a lot more difficult. It's low percentage, all of that. So again, if you can do that, though, that will always win. Football is the same game that it's always been. If you can move guys off the line of scrimmage, you will win. That's why you still want to try and develop that. And that's why Coach Norvell is still sticking to that run game, because if you can do that, then that's how you win games in December and January.
So we'll take one more from Ralph, Spartan Noles 71 for D-Rob. This is a broad one, Dominic, and he's asking you, if you're a head coach, what changes do you make to what you see? So put it another way, what would you like to see more of now that you're watching Florida State, granularly?
Nothing. What they're doing right now is phenomenal. On all aspects. I mean, heck, throwing Keon back there to return punts this week. I mean, right now it feels like I wish I could be in some of those coaches' meetings like this year, because I feel like that staff is showing up and they've got to be so happy to look at the pieces that they now have in relation to what they had when they first got there. I mean, they just have to be like kids in a candy store. They got to be so fired up because he's just like, there's so many things that they can do now that they couldn't do. They couldn't even imagine to do.